I'm so glad to be here again. It's always great to be here. Anytime you want to have me come back, I do enjoy this conference. Great to hear from you. So when I'm in the States, sometimes the Monty Python references don't quite hit, but they might here. So I'll say now for something completely different. Actually, my son, when he was like 9, came running out of the beach and yelled, when he runs out of the beach and he falls down at the beginning. So he's like 9 years old in the U.S. No one else knew what he was doing, but that's the beginning of the Monty Python show. Well, anyway, I'm John Spink. I'm a professor at Michigan State University. I spent 12 years in industry before coming back to get my PhD. If any of you are thinking about going back to get your PhD, talk to me. I'll try to talk you out of it. It was the absolute definition of a humbling experience to be 43, 45 with a bunch of 23-year-olds that had just been through calculus-based physics experimental design. But I'm not very good at dissuading people. But for me, it was great. I wanted to get into more detail, and then I started teaching. I was going to go be a consultant. They asked me to teach one class and another class, and I'm coming up on 20 years at MSU, which I can't believe. So it's been fabulous for me because I wanted to be at this intersection between industry, where I was, academia, but then applying it. So many academics tell you the problem and say, oh, but you go figure it out. It's like, but actually, food fraud is defined by Frederick Ackham in 1822, and here we are 200 years later, and we're just getting a handle on it. Wiley was about, 1905, 6-ish something. He explained the adulteration of food and said someone else should do something about it. He defined the problem, and so here, there's again 100 and something, 25 years later. So what did happen was, for me, it was just a unique opportunity. I was at events like this, and someone next to me said, oh, you had this interesting presentation you did on anti-counterfeiting. What do you think about applying it to food? I said, well, yeah, I could go this way. And they said, well, we've got a conference coming up with our advisory board. It's easier for us to have you come to us than you go to them. So I said, sure, that's fine. So I went. It ended up being the S-Safe board meeting right before the GFSI board meeting. I really didn't know who these people were at the time, but I quickly became aware that there was something here. And that's what happened. It kind of just built up to look at food fraud. And at that time, melamine had come out, and horse meat hadn't occurred yet. And so the Global Food Safety Initiative was looking at what is food fraud? Should it be in a food safety management system? Because they were getting really concerned because it kept happening. We catch it, get it out of the system, and then it kept happening again. So GFSI created a think tank. It was just a small group of people that they set up to give the advisory board some insight. And in the middle of that, horse meat occurred, horse meat and beef across the UK. And they changed the focus to, instead of what is food fraud and how might it be in the Global Food Safety Initiative in every single food safety management system, to how will it be in? And what's the scope of it when it is in? So now, whether you realize it or not, you're supposed to be pushing 10 plus years of having a complete comprehensive food fraud prevention, vulnerability assessment and prevention plan in place for a competent and certified food safety management system. Now don't worry, because we've got a lot of history of setting it up real simple, of me taking that industry approach to make it very easy for you to start forward on it. So that's my background, and I've been at this for quite a while. I'm going to set my timer because I could go probably 4 hours on this. We have a lot of information, and foodfraudprevention.com is a website. There's videos, there's free training, all sorts of stuff. The next slide will have more information on that. So what we do is this education, outreach, and research. So me being here and hearing you talk, and even afterwards here at the reception, just to hear questions, clarifications, things that we need to adjust, that's outreach. When I think about it, in my drive home, I'll be taking notes, then we'll do research. We'll go back and look at the next academic paper or some other training, and that goes into education, and the cycle just continues there. I put everything together in a textbook. If you're a food safety management or manager for a company, this was set as a good resource for you. It's very comprehensive, but then we have these massive open online courses. Free, open, online. Anybody can take them as long as you have internet access. And so there's a number of them, including certificates of completion and assessments. So if you're an auditor, or in the new GFSI guidelines, you have to demonstrate your knowledge. And this is a way that you could do that. Now, we didn't just make this up. It really came from those days with GFSI where someone said, well, we need a little training on this or that. And so it really industry was asking us to be a part of helping you create the courses that you needed for yourselves. Also common across the room. GFSI is common, and so working with SSAFE and GFSI, we together created training that met those universal needs. So that's what's in there with those assessments. There's 4 that are core, like overview, a vulnerability assessment. So as I talk about that and you wonder what you need to do, that's put together in there, supply chain management and procurement. And then an audit guide. So if you're getting audited or auditing, that's a key there. And then some specialty ones, food defense, enterprise risk management, and others. 2 that I'm really proud of is USDA asked us to create the training for the USDA organic inspectors. That was different because USDA asked us to train their people. So that was really intense. They were very involved, engaged, and I learned a lot about their needs, but also communication about training people on the topic. So those are USDA. Again, those are all available free. And then we have a certificate of completion. So again, if you're a food fraud manager, this was put together so that if you want to try to feel like you know the full concept, that's a way to demonstrate that. Or if you have someone working for you that you're going to dish this on, then you can just lead them to that, and then you hold us accountable for something that's common training. We do a lot of other things like professional development and education. I actually leapt ahead. So again, I worked for Chevron for 12 years before coming back. PhD in packaging about risk management, but went to, food fraud started to pop up. I went to the School of Criminal Justice. And that's the key. We've got a human adversary here, not E. coli. And so if it's E. coli, we'd look at microbiology, but a human does not act like E. coli. So for criminologists, this is really common concepts. They've dealt with this forever. And then I went to food safety, which is in our College of Vet Med, and then I'm now currently in business. Supply chain management in the business department, the business college, because this is a part of your supply chains. This is a part of your business staying in business. Beyond just food safety and public health threats, this is an economic threat to your company. So I've kind of gone full circle there, and I'm in that side of it. So the way that this started was where you are, for most of you, is food safety and food authenticity, analytical testing. And so all of a sudden, pets were getting sick. They didn't know what it was. They figured out this melamine was in there, and they tested for melamine, and they recalled the product, got it out of the system. But that doesn't mean the problem is over. So from there, we looked at the root cause, which again, for E. coli would be microbiology. It was a human adversary. That was criminal justice, criminology. It's fascinating. My mom's 88. She loves to read the criminology art reports and things. It's about crime and people, deception and threats and all sorts of good stuff. But that's criminology for the root cause. But just because we understand the root cause doesn't mean we've responded to it. And there really needs to be an overarching structure across the industry. And the food industry is the most advanced of any industry because you have the Global Food Safety Initiative. They set the direction for what the industry will follow. And approximately 65% of the world trade are members, but a key is it's at the end of the supply chain, like Loblaws, who's here several times people mentioned. So when they have a specification to meet GFSI, people do as well. So that was the standards, but that's not it. We're not done yet. How much is enough? How much testing, how much control, which suppliers do you buy from? There needed to be a business decision-making, and that got into business itself, or enterprise risk management, and then supply chain management. Because ultimately, this is another total quality management, supply chain management process. And so we now work into those systems. So it's really extremely interdisciplinary. So what I'll do for you is when I come to a conference, I try to see what the other speakers are talking about, figure out where I fit in. So I looked at the conference content, a real quick slide on that, and then where this topic fits in or not. And that helps me adjust. We'll look at food authentication, which is the natural extension from everything we've been talking about today, a lot of very analytical testing type things. Supply chain vulnerability mapping, and that's the key, is to understand what type of fraud is occurring, where. And at that point, let's say that your neighbor kid keeps coming in your house and taking the beer out of your fridge, 12-year-old kid or something. Well, how do they get in? So now that's the incident, but how do they get in? Well, you leave your front door unlocked. All right, so do you want to have an alarm system, bars in the windows? No, lock the front door. And that's what we do with supply chain mapping. Look at what's going on from a specific incident and build up. And now all of a sudden, if he's climbing in the window, well, lock the windows as well. That's where the supply chain mapping fits in. It's really pretty simple once you kind of just let yourself have a simple approach. And then criminology, the optimal crime prevention intervention. And again, criminologists have studied this forever, and we look at how to get that kid to not want to go into your house. Maybe you get a dog. You have a big Rottweiler, that kid, even if you leave all the windows and doors open, nobody may ever go in your house. See, that's the thing, that one action, one intervention could change the whole dynamic. You could leave your windows and doors open at that point. So that's what we'll look through when we get to that point. So first, I've got to say something about, I will say, technology automation. So we have, for 2 years now, I've taught classes that are AI native. We have one class, there's no textbook. We start at the beginning of the semester and say, what should we study, and just go. Because that's what you do when you have problems. So we've done a lot, and it's really about technology automation. So just a couple things there. To provide a massive understatement, and this is from being immersed for 2 years in it, it's transformational. Whew. And that's an understatement. It also could be an existential threat to everything that we do in your jobs. So for me, as I thought, I need to get my own personal subscription to ChatGPT and start playing with it, with non-confidential, non-company information, but just get to know it. And let me tell you, my abilities is so unbelievably, I'm able to do so much more in such little time, so much more depth, things I would have never taken the time to do. We are pushing the limits for us. And so if you are interested in a workshop on food fraud prevention, this is just a video. So take a picture of that URL code thing, that this is just uses basic information, walks you through ChatGPT, Notebook LM, and the third, maybe Gamma for presentations. So it just walks you from basics all the way through. So it's been refined over time. So that's something to look at. 2 quick concepts with AI, which leads into the food fraud concepts as well, is what we've termed AI frisson. So some of the French speakers can help with that. I've had some French students tell me that it was logical. I asked ChatGPT how I was feeling about this. Anxiety, excitement, things like that, and they said frisson. So a sudden rush of excitement with mixed unease. And I think that definitely does that kind of describe what you're thinking? And so that's it. I'm a little bit terrified every single day, but I'm also euphoric every day of what I find. And we need to embrace that, because there's some things that we're able to do that's absolutely unbelievable, because we would never, I looked at the word illicit in the last 50 years of the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations. I didn't look at it, I asked AI to look at it. I confirmed AI could access that, and it's like 1 million pages. I wanted to understand how the word was used. Those are things we can do. And the other is, it's a couple times today you heard human in the loop. And that's a key one. We have shifted our students to AI in the loop. So I'll explain that. So on the one side, you've got, you ask AI, start to do the whole process, and you watch it going on, and you then adjust it a little bit as it's doing, what are there, 4 distinct steps. It's operating, and you just tweak it a little. The opposite is what we do and what you do in your job. You have 4 steps that you do for whatever, review an incident or something like that. At each step, you ask AI to help. You do the next step, you ask AI to help, and that. And to start incrementally like that has been where the biggest innovations have occurred. Really simple, like, oh my gosh, I wish this spreadsheet was organized in a different way. See, so ask it, focus on the AI in the loop to help you just a little bit. So I felt like I needed to do that at the start because, again, well, anyway, that's a whole other story. So I did ask AI. I put in the conference information, and I said, tell me who are the other presenters and what are they talking about? So it did tell me here, and I did find out in here that I was the only one talking about intentional acts. So that led me to realize maybe there's a different way that I need to approach my presentation than if half the presentations talked about food fraud, then it could be a little different. So I tried to frame it for myself. Oh, no. And then I asked it, what is my unique contribution? So the first one was the only one talking about intentional acts, which is a good ratio for what we've got here. So that's something good to talk about, and I changed a little bit for that. Science-backed authentication. So we need to pick the right tests for the right threat. So, okay, that helped me to understand the scope, what I should be talking about. And the global regulatory alignment. I've already talked about GFSI, and that's a key because GFSI is food safety management systems. GFSI is calibrated with around the world with other systems, US, Canada, Europe, China, and around. So that's the regulatory alignment. The basics that we're going to talk about are aligned with GFSI, which are aligned with the regulatory requirements. And this is now it's for me to talk about the bridge between food safety and traditional food safety testing and food fraud prevention. So that'll be next here. So I do have to start to remind everybody what is food fraud and what's the scope. Intentional deception for economic gain using food. This is, we published this in an academic article. It's basically used by GFSI and others as well. It's all types of fraud. Not just an adulterant substance, not just a substance that causes people harm. It's anything in there because your company needs you to protect them against anything. If it's mislabeled, if it says a product of Quebec and it's a product of someplace else, of Vermont, then it's mislabeled. Doesn't matter if the product is safe. If you have plants in both locations, your company will have a recall. And why it hasn't been addressed for really thoroughly is that there's always an economic threat, but our public health food agencies are really public health agencies, and there's not always a public health threat. Even with horse meat and beef, there was a vulnerability, but they didn't find any real public health threats. You could argue about buttes or veterinarians, you can see me later, but there wasn't any public health outbreaks. So a public health agency said, it's someone else, it's FBI. Well, the FBI for us is chasing things that go boom, and we want them to chase things that go boom. So this horse meat thing was low profile. That's why the food industry and we all had to jump in from the food safety, quality management side to address it, because there's always a vulnerability. If someone is messing with our product, even if it's stolen genuine goods that get reintroduced into commerce, there could be a problem there. The scope is all types of fraud. This is really tough because most of you are supplier quality assurance, incoming goods, ingredients. That's a crucial part of food fraud prevention, but it's not everything. Again, your company needs to have your product ready for McDonald's or whoever to receive it. They don't just care that the ingredients are fine. In manufacturing, plant managers can short product to make the numbers look good. Product can get stolen or commingled in transportation or return goods. So it includes stolen goods, counterfeits, misbranding, and others. Now, for your companies, you identify that you cover your area, and you should identify the areas you do not cover, and that's a key. Also, that's GFSI, but also just this last 2 weeks, I've been on calls, webinars for McDonald's, and their global food safety guidance requirements are changing, and there's about 5 times more food fraud detail in there, and covering all these concepts are all the way. The full range of products are in there. And the scope, the entire supply chain. It's not just incoming goods, it's in manufacturing, it's in distribution, it's contract manufacturers, it's actually return goods as well. So just as a scope there. Now, at this point, it seems like I just made, this time in the afternoon, I just made life really terrible. You can't wait to have a mocktail. But the thing is that this is what's required, and now then we say, okay, what do we do as a group to move forward? So we do have done a lot of research on authenticity testing. There's a lot of research out there and summaries. This was a report, article that I was on with Bert Popping, and in there we describe all the different ways and test methods to look at different types of authenticity testing. A key, though, is that doesn't cover all types of fraud. What if there's no reference sample? I mean, so you're going to say you're going to authenticate a tomato. What's a reference sample for a tomato? Roma, what kind? So there's sometimes a challenge of those reference materials. Now, what if the product's stolen or date code tampering? That product is absolutely authentic but unequivocally illegal. Unless you're selling it and say it's stolen tomatoes in the product. But that gets tough because authenticity testing alone can't cover everything. But we need to understand the incident and the vulnerability, and that comes from the supply chain. From supply chain management, again, my department now, this is not novel. We've been tracking product supply chain visibility, supply chain transparency. That's been for 50 years, we've been doing a lot with that. Criminologists look at the space of crime as well. They've been doing that since the situational crime prevention since the mid-1970s. So that's what we then put together to try to then go to those disciplines and then bring it back to the food safety arena. So supply chain vulnerability mapping, this is what we need to do at first. So think about the kid next door that breaks in your house to have the beer. So we need to start to understand that, to understand what and how, where, why, and how it happens, what's their motivation. And once we understand that, we can understand what's the most simple thing we could do to put in place. Now, if you thought right now that was happening to you, you could send a text back to somebody else and say, oh, go lock the door, close the window. So right, I mean, how long would it take for you to shoot a text home and say, emergency, go lock the front door? You know, it could be minutes, but that's the thing. It happens right away. Now, getting a Rottweiler maybe, a week, to go to the shelter or something, but you can do, those are things you absolutely can do once we understand the problem and we're dealing with a specific incident. So the concept in criminology is hot products and hot spots. So for that kid, that's the beer, and the hot spot is them getting into your house and your refrigerator. So we try to narrow the focus to the specific type of crime, specific action. Now, in your company, you have a lot of vulnerabilities, so we just kind of add those up. We look at the beer, maybe someone else wants to steal something else, maybe someone takes a flowers out of your back patio or whatever. Then we add those together to figure out what we need to do. And the crime targets are the hot products, and the hot spots are those places where it occurs. So this is supply chain mapping in a very simple sense, and this was for horse meat and beef in the UK. This was actually Ireland as well. So we looked at, what was happening in the supply chain. So you've got these local farms going to the local butcher there in Romania, in this case, goes to a food broker in Ireland, goes to a meat processor in Ireland, then it went to the retailer, and then it went to the consumer. So now we know the supply chain. Now we'll look at where the fraud occurred, which happened to be back here, somewhere in this area, where they said, hey, let's put some horse meat in here for whatever reason. Horse meat could be lower priced. Horse meat could be higher priced. Maybe they were short of beef that month. Whatever it was, that's where the fraud occurred. Maybe they were complicit. Maybe they were complicit. We don't know yet. But that's the root cause. That's the incident. That's where it occurred, the action. Now, what do? Do you go back to Romania and send all your, Costco said they have 3 auditors. You're going to send them to Romania and run around? Well, where? So we started to look at this one more step, and we look at those hot spots. First one is where the product occurred, the mislabeling. Once there's horse meat and beef together, that's not illegal until there's a label on it that says it's only beef. So see, at the beginning, that product's not illegal. There's no law against putting horse meat and beef together. Now, you might ask a question about that, but again, it's not illegal until the label gets on it. So even if you went back, Costco sent all 3 of them back here, and they found bins full of horse meat and beef, that's not illegal. Could be suspicious, but not illegal. The second hot spot is, and that's how they found it. No one could believe it, and they started testing, and it was so many places. So now we look at this and say, okay, where could we put the most efficient countermeasure in place? And what I'd say is, who are you? Where do you have the most control of your product? And where's the most efficient place to conduct the simplest crime prevention intervention? What wasn't done that could easily be done is, let's say here where those retailers, if when they received product, if they did a species test. Now, so again, you could send a text message, and in the next hour, I bet you could have someone pulling sample, if not doing the test, getting samples set aside to do a species test. Better be within an hour, right? If you think there's a food safety incident, there's going to be in minutes. Someone's going to be taking samples. So that's under your control. Now, maybe it was these people, they could still do that test. The thing was, is they didn't do tests of the species because they just assumed it was what it was. There's no reason. We don't test for everything, but they didn't know. They tested for quality, food safety, things like that. Actually, the horse meat was a higher cut of meat, more muscle than tendons and things than the beef. So the companies that were receiving it were thrilled. The product was higher quality than they had paid for it. So that's the things. We look at the whole system. Now it becomes pretty simple. We're not sending the 3 Costco auditors to Romania to try to find people of things that aren't even illegal yet. We're saying, hey, ship it through. You know what? We're going to test it right here. If you're fine with it, then ship it to us. But the thing was, is that then shifts the accountability to here. It shifts the accountability to here and to here. Let me tell you, you find horse meat, you ain't calling the supplier. You're calling the Irish government. You're customs. And nobody wants to be on a customs watch list. That's the thing that we did. So it sounds so complex, but you find those individual incidents and look at where can she act right now on something that would fundamentally change the dynamics. And it was great to see later is that this is a EU report for honey where they did map the supply chain. They looked at how, why, where, and where fraud occurs. And then they looked at effective countermeasures for different types of fraud at different locations. These are all public documents. So, okay, eye chart, forgive me for a second here, but what we've got here is they looked at the supply chain for honey coming into the EU. They identified foreign collector, foreign blender, foreign suppliers. It came into the EU, did all the steps. This is from their own supply chain mapping, customs documents, things like that. And then they looked along here of where fraud might be occurring and what type of fraud. Document fraud. And the one that I'll focus on is way here at the end. So if you're a retailer, you look at the whole supply chain and think, where can I do something simple? Oh my gosh, this is terrible. But at the very end here, when you're receiving product, sugar syrup adulteration, beef feeding, ultrafiltration, document fraud. Now we've got some very specific things to do. And one of those is C3, C4 sugars that get put in. So right now then, again, send an email. They're now taking honey samples at the receiving dock. You might say, hey, hold on to it for like a day till we look at this, till we figure this out. But you could be taking samples right now. And C3, C4 sugars are pretty simple to test for. We're not talking about like DNA, this and that. But that's the thing is when we find out this specific act, find out what's under your control, once you do that vulnerability assessment, you can find these things and you can make some massive reductions in your vulnerability. But we have to start kind of methodically with that. So the takeaways for me here is, number one is food fraud prevention is required for you. Use our resources, contact us. It's a good place to start. Talk to your customers. You sell to someone like McDonald's, as I mentioned, they're going to have a lot of resources for you. And you talk to your peers. It's like food safety. We're all trying to protect the entire supply chain. So with that is food authenticity testing will always be the most important while the most challenging task. So the suppliers here that are doing that type of testing, unbelievable the science behind that. So critical. We need to be able to test for that product, for the products that do have a reference sample or have that adulteration occurring. We need to understand where, how, why the fraud act occurred, could or did occur, because just because it didn't occur, you're still vulnerable. So if you heard your neighbor's house was broken into by that 12-year-old for beer, if you leave your front door open and you have beer, you're vulnerable too. Now you just say, oh, no, forget it. He hasn't been to our house yet. But why not if you know that? And how easy is that? Go lock the door, neighbor. So that's the thing is, could or did occur. That's a key. We want to find these vulnerabilities, and we want to share that as much as possible so we all learn in that neighborhood so everybody then does lock their doors. We cannot test for everything all the time. So really, we need to look at prevention, and we look at those vulnerabilities. And you'd be surprised, once you get started, how simple it is to take one incident, look at that map, and now think, okay, let's just set aside a sample. Do we have an authenticity test for that? Does someone here have an authenticity test for canola oil and sunflower oil, whatever it is? And then you start to move forward slowly on that. So with that, we have tons of information. Actually, the food fraud prevention is there. I'd love to talk to you. What often happens is, again, at the end of the day, I've just fed you a glass of water through a fire hose a little bit, and so you might be a little bit shell-shocked on some of this, but hopefully you feel comfortable that there are resources and there's people that are able to help as well as with your peers. So if it ends up being next week or next month or whatever where you have an incident or have one of those situations, then assume I would like to know and hear from you. That's what we're going to look at with food fraud prevention. So with that, we'll take some questions and see how it goes.
John? Oh, okay, we already have a hand up.
All right.
We'll get the microphone right to you.
Where's the question?
Right out front there.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Asima, and I'm from Intercity Packers in Edmonton. So let's say food fraud has happened, and we have a product from outside Canada. It's an international product. And at the receiving, at the port, we know that it's adulterated. It's a millions of dollars worth of product. Can we still have it? Ask the vendor to adjust the pricing. We change our label, do the proper declaration, and can we still sell it?
It would depend on, let's say that they imported a product that said that it was 10 pounds of pistachio, Dubai chocolate. 10 pounds of Dubai chocolate coming in. And you find out it's only 9 pounds. That label is incorrect. It has crossed the border. It's illegal product that's crossed the border because the weight's off. So at that point, then, you could talk to the supplier, talk to customs, and say, now, the thing is we don't know if that's fraud or not. Is it intentional or not? Oh, golly, sorry, our scale was off. But that's why we want to look at the vulnerability. And if you're testing that, then you do catch it. Now, you could reject it at that point because, again, if it crossed a border with anything incorrect on it, it could be seized and destroyed at that moment instantly. So that's a key. But so it depends on that, and it depends on your comfort with the vulnerability. That's where it goes up in corporate to go to general counsel and other people. And do you want to be, like in that case with the customs group, if it crossed the border and you're receiving it, I would say you want to make sure that it's been approved by Canadian Customs before you receive it, because you're actually receiving illegal goods at that point. Because then the label says it's 9 pounds versus 10. So at least, I guess I might be making that sound more complex than it is. Listen to the situation and just work through it and just think methodically about it. You might be able to still use it. Now, it's like, remember about food safety, you can't dilute down a hazard. If it's 10 parts per million and the limit is 5, you just can't dilute it. So we have to be careful of different regulations. So.
Excellent. Another question? Yes.
Excellent.
One thing I can safely tell you, no one's going to buy Dubai chocolate ever again here.
Actually, I kept looking for it. It is good, right? Actually, I had a big bag of pistachios earlier. So you know what? I didn't worry about it.
Hi, my name is Saleha. I'm from Conestoga. So my question is related to your hotspot analysis for horse meat.
Yep.
So why was it declared as a food fraud? Because horse meat is expensive than beef, so there is no economic gain. So to me, it seems like more of the wrong label or mislead.
You bring up a great point. The key is putting horse meat and beef together is not illegal. Labeling that as 100% beef is illegal. It was mislabeled. And it was conducted for fraud. In that case, the horse meat was a lot less expensive than the beef.
Okay.
So they bid at $100, whatever it was, and this product cost $50. So some of it was 100% horse that came in. Some was blended as well. So the key, and that's, we have a hotspot, we have a food fraud suspicious activity report survey. So when you receive, well, that same for both of you, you receive an incident and a suspicious activity, you start to fill it in. It is a series of questions. What law or regulation is violated? What does the label say? Do we have the label? Do we have a specification? And a lot of times, you expected them to give you something other than what they gave you, and that's not fraud. And so you say, oh, but I thought it was 10 pounds. No, it says here 8 pounds or more. So that's the key, is going through the details, because sometimes we think it's fraud, but it might not be.
Thank you.
Oh, we have one more question here on this side.
Hi, my name's Ashley. I'm from Reuven, and I've attended the Think Tank sessions before, the online ones, so I would highly recommend attending some of those courses. So we talked about AI earlier, and we know that there's financial gain from the intentional adulteration, and the fraudsters are smart. So is there concerns with them using AI to deceive us, and what can we do from that AI component of it?
Absolutely 100% the vulnerability goes up. We were at a Michigan Department of Ag conference, and at the coffee break between one of our presentations, I doctored up it was a cottage industry, so home industry, a certificate from the Michigan Department of Ag, and we started to mess with it with AI and the different image programs, and we showed it on the screen. We said, okay, let's figure out what type of fraud's going on, the date, this and that. They didn't notice that we had put in dinosaur meat in it. So definitely these documents look so good. But think about your bank. Two-factor authentication, you check your balance, they look for fraud, things like that. So that's what we're looking at this next level, where you look for the vulnerability, but then you occasionally have a test. You ask them to confirm it's 100% beef, then you ask them to submit the COA with the test that says it's 100% beef. Beyond that, you ask them to let you contact the lab directly and get the lab report if you want to, and she's taking retains. So all of a sudden then, you could be buying from Al Capone, the great Chicago mafia criminal Don, and he doesn't have a fraud opportunity. And that's the thing we look at more multi-factor authentication. Now, the other thing we can do is we can look for anomalies a lot more quickly. And one we look for product that's imported around the world is if it passes through a free trade zone and how long it was in the free trade zone. The free trade zone is nobody's control. It could come in there and be repackaged. You know, one shipping container comes in, they clone it, 4 go out. The documents are all legit for one, but you don't know which one. So we'd even see that if there's an extended time that a product goes through a free trade zone, that might trigger to look at that more closely. So we just need to look at the incident and the supply chain map and say, okay, what's different now? And there's a new incident. How does that change what we know? And then what are simple things we can do to look at it? So we're looking at that two-factor authentication type thing. And again, the key is that you're not just setting the spec as 100% beef, you're asking them to confirm it, and then you're getting access to lab tests. Or she's got retains, and so you don't know if they're going to test it. And remember, these are not, it sounds like a joke, it's not really, these are not crackheads that are trying to get a hit for tonight. They don't mind if they're in jail. They're going to do anything to get it. They'll carjack a police car. This is not them. This is someone that's in the business. They have invested. They've got operations and equipment. They're very skittish. From a criminology standpoint, these are very criminal, they're very skittish enterprises. So the minute she starts saying she's taking retains, and you ask for the C of A confirmed from that lab report, that a lot of times the food fraud vulnerability goes down really, really rapidly because just, again, they're skittish. And they're not going to risk their entire business for 5% fraud.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
All right, thanks.